Women Empowerment Desk of the Central Tibetan Administration works toward empowering Tibetan women and building a gender-just Tibetan community. One of its key programs is the Prevention and Response to Sexual and Gender-Based Violence, SGBV. The Central Tibetan Administration, in its commitment towards the elimination of all forms of sexual and gender-based violence in all spaces of the exiled Tibetan community, has adopted a zero-tolerance policy for any types of SGBV in the community. In 2020, the Kashak of the Central Tibetan Administration developed guidelines for the purpose of preventing and addressing SGBV in the Tibetan community. In today's episode of In Conversation, I'm very pleased to have Ms. Tenzin from the Women Empowerment Desk of the Central Tibetan Administration in our studio today to tell us more about this initiative. Welcome to our program.
Thank you, Pandila. It's good to be here.
Okay, so to start with, since the CTA SGBV guidelines has been established a few years ago, and it started its implementation in the Tibetan settlements and schools in India. Consequently, over the last few months, your desk has been visiting Tibetan settlements across India to organize SGBV guidelines orientation and internal complaint committee training and gender sensitization workshop, which I think the recent, which was concluded in Bandara, Norgilling Tibetan settlement. So, can you tell us the background of how this initiative was started and how this guideline is based on?
So, as you clearly mentioned, CTA has made commitments towards eliminating all forms of sexual and gender-based violence in the community. So, the zero tolerance policy, CTA has adopted zero tolerance policy for any such incidents in our community. So, as a step towards the fulfillment of this commitment, or to put this policy into practice, the Women's Empowerment Desk, we have initiated a large-scale program on sexual and gender-based violence. So, as part of that program, we initially supported or developed the guidelines, as you mentioned, which was approved by the CTA's Kashak and mandated by the Kashak in 2020. So since then, we have been working actively on implementing the guidelines. So as part of the program, we visit different Tibetan schools, settlements, and even the CTA offices to introduce or orient the members about the guideline, to institutionalize the prevention and the redressal mechanism accordingly the guideline in our community. So yes, as part of that program, we have been visiting the different settings in the community, such as the settlement and schools, since 2020.
And how many Tibetan settlements have you covered so far, and what is the main focus of this initiative to our community?
Well, since 2020, since the guideline was approved and mandated by the CTA's cabinet, we have visited around 21 settlements and I think 20 schools which are based in south, north and central parts of India. And we have also visited different Tibetan colleges and institutions like the Varanasi Tibetan College, or the Sara, the Dalai Lama Institute in Bangalore, Mentsikang, and we have oriented the staff and students about the guideline. We have also organized orientation workshop for Tibetan youths in the different cities like Mysore, Baroda, and I think LBU, Lovely Professional University in Jalandhar as well. So in the next step, we plan to visit the remaining settlements and schools which are mainly based in the northeast region.
So how do you find their responses, Tibetans from our community on these guidelines, and what did you learn from our community?
Well, so far the response from the community on the guidelines has been positive, and I would say that people have been receptive about the guidelines, and they appreciate the efforts made by CTA to address this issue. So yeah, the response has been positive, but yes, like some of the people in the community are still hesitant, or they question how like this will work out, like how we can combat this issue in the community. We also learned that people still lack what you say, like awareness on the SGBV issue. We know that there is increasing awareness about gender and women empowerment, but the SGBV issue is because of the lack of platform or discussion on this issue. People do not know much about this issue. They still think that these issues are only associated with women and girls, and then it doesn't happen to men and boys, you know. And there are a lot of shame or like stigma attached. So people tend to not report about when such incidents happen. Also, it was quite interesting to know, or that people accepting and sharing that, you know, such incidents have happened in our community. So yeah, the guidelines and the redressal mechanisms, like we need them, you know, so that we can address this issue, or that the victims of such violence can get the necessary help or the guidance, because the legal mechanisms, many people have hesitancy, like or questions about how to, like, if they face such violence, they do not know the legal mechanisms that are available. So we were able to explain and encourage people to, you know, not to shy away or not to fear about not reporting. So that's what we have learned. And another thing, in the school, there is a lot of awareness about how to protect children from sexual offenses. So I think in the school spaces, the awareness on protecting children from sexual violence are there. But then in terms of creating a safe workplace that is free from sexual harassment, that I think these issues were quite new to them. So it was interesting to discuss about that issue with the school, in the school setting.
Okay. And what are the challenges in such workshop and SGBV programs?
Well, in any sexual and gender-based violence program in any community, there's always a challenge. Firstly, because these issues are quite sensitive, and people do not want to openly talk about it, or they have hesitancy to share because of the shame and the stigma attached, right? So we firstly like to bring the topic out to the people and for people to engage. It took a lot of, it does take time. And then when we were able to create the safe space, then people open up about it, and they normally they used to think that these are private matters and should be, you know, solved within amongst the people involved. So yeah, then this for a fact sheds light on the, you know, on the need for building the trust. So it takes time, right, building the trust, so that victims of SGBV can, you know, report and get the necessary help. So one challenge was that to build the trust with the community. Then the other challenge is that people have the perception that these are like a new concept or new sort of issue that is being brought, or that is being put on the community, you know. So yeah, that is also a challenge for us to say that, you know, SGBV or these issues exist in every community. It's just that it takes form in different. It takes different forms in different communities. So we had to contextualize about this issue in our community setting, and to, you know, also find ways to prevent and address this issue based on our community needs and the issue that our community faces in this regard.
What do you think you or the WED see the main causes of sexual and gender-based violence in our community?
Well, as I mentioned before, sexual and gender-based violence, these issues exist in all the communities or societies in the world, and it takes place in different forms. So I think these issues also exist in our community. So if we are to look at the cause of these issues in our community, I think we need to look beyond what is in front of us, and we need to make an attempt to look deeper into the different factors that contribute to sexual and gender-based violence in our community. So some of these contributing factors are related to social factors, or the political factors, or the legal factors. So in terms of social factors, we can see that in our community there are some harmful gender norms and gender stereotyping, which causes or which normalizes sexual and gender-based violence. And also these gender norms and gender stereotypes and also affects the attitudes of the people and how they look at this issue, right? So secondly, in terms of legal factors, till the guideline was implemented or like mandated by the CTA, there were no legal instruments. And even though there are like legal instruments in the host country, like Indian laws, which still apply to us, people still were not aware of these legal mechanisms. So there are lack of reporting because of that. So legal factors also contribute to how like these issues exist in our community.
Women Empowerment Desk also provides helpline service that renders services from counseling to providing safe spaces. So can you tell us more about the helpline services and its effectiveness in our community?
Yes, we have set up a helpline services as part of our program on sexual and gender-based violence. The helpline was established in collaboration with the Tibetan Women Association back in 2020. So there are currently 3 staff working in the helpline. One receives the phone call and one is a counselor. The third person is an outreach worker who creates awareness about helpline services in the community. So since its activation in 2020, I think they have received over 86 calls from the community, right? So I think if we are to talk about the effectiveness of the helpline service, it is quite evident with the number of calls that they have received and the number of people they have been able to help through their services. So if some of the services of the helpline includes referral services meaning like they will explain to the victims the legal options. They will lay down the options, like the legal options if they were to go to the police station or if they have to go to the settlement committees on SGBV. And they also provide counseling services to the victims of violence, because often like we might be able to just like we might be able to physically like get ourselves the medical help, but then the psychological impact is quite what you call it, the impact of psychological impacts are quite longer to a victim. So they offer counseling services. They also provide shelter to the victims if needed, and there are like emergency funds which will be allocated to victims when needed. So in all, like I think the helpline service it's quite effective, and because it's one of a kind in our community, it's the first time that we have such helpline. People are coming out and reporting and getting the necessary help that they need.
So that also means you're getting calls from Tibetan community, not just in Dharamshala but from all over India?
Yes, first, like initially when it was activated in 2020, we did a pilot study, as in like we only focused on the north settlements and the north region. And then since 2021-22, we have opened the helpline service to all the communities. But the thing is, I think for a helpline service to be effective, there should be a lot of awareness on the helpline service. Like people should be able to know that such services exist, right? So with the increase in the awareness, and there are also increase in the number of reportings or like people reaching out to the helpline. So yeah.
And lastly, before I sign off with this conversation, how does the WED see the current state of sexual and gender-based violence in our community? And can you also suggest some ways to prevent such violences?
So if we are to talk about the status or the current situation of sexual and gender-based violence in our community, we can look at one of our research study which was conducted in 2021. It was on the status of sexual and gender-based violence in Tibetan community in India. So in that report, of almost 50% of the respondent shared that this issue like exists in our community, and that 89% or 90% respondent said that these issues mostly happen to women and girls. So if we are to try to understand the situation of this issue in our community, we can definitely say that these issues are existent in our community. And from the data from the helpline services, almost I think 30-40% cases that are reported are of the domestic violence cases. So domestic violence case is most prevalent in our community. And also if we are to talk about measures to prevent such violence in our community, first I think we still need more awareness and awareness activities like campaigns and workshops, to create more awareness. And also to through these workshops and awareness activities, we can help promote positive attitudes in the community towards such issue. Secondly, I think other measures can include making the redressal mechanism accessible to all the people, so that victims of violence can get the necessary help. Also, I think we need to revisit our policies and include ways to address such issues, and we can also allocate funds to SGBV programs. So for now, I feel like these are some of the measures how we can prevent violence in our community.
Tsetan, so these are my questions for today, and thank you so much for this important conversation.
Thank you.
With this, we have come to the end of today's episode of In Conversation with Tibettv. We talked about the implementation of SGBV guidelines in Tibetan schools and settlements across India by the Women Empowerment Desk of Central Tibetan Administration over the last few months. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode.